How would you feel if you were suddenly separated from your home, job, family, friends, and life, all within the span of one night? This is what happened on August 12, 1961, to the people of Berlin when the Berlin Wall was built, marking a time where they will have lost nearly all their rights, leaving them responsible to fight for their freedom and safety for the next 28 years until November 9, 1989, though even then, their fight wouldn't be over. On August 12, 1961, the people of Berlin exemplified rights and responsibilities by destroying the wall to get their rights back and exercising their responsibilities for one another by fighting for each other to be finally happy and free again. The actions taken by the people of Berlin included stopping the sides and their families from being separated, allowing the people of Berlin to start thinking of democracy, stopping being suppressed by the Soviet, after destroying the wall and gaining their cultural/creative freedom back. Following the destruction of the Berlin Wall, the people of Berlin changed the world, and the Soviets' perspective towards the idea of borders, democracy, human rights, and global relations.
After World War II, Berlin was separated into 4 different sections controlled by 4 different countries, which were the Soviets, France, England, and the U.S. About 3 years later, these sections merged into 2, the Soviets in East Berlin, while France, England, and the U.S. were in West Berlin. All this was initially sparked by World War II, which spiked poverty and hunger among many other issues throughout Germany, though the Cold War, which occurred shortly after World War II, was the push that really caused all of this to happen, and for the separation of the Soviet Communist Party versus the Western Socialist Party to be final.
People began to spread rumors about the wall in 1961, but on June 15th, the East German leader Walter Ulbricht assured them nothing would happen. A few nights later, on August 12th to 13th, a barbed wire barrier was placed, and the construction of the wall began. The sad truth was not even the people laying down the barbed wire knew what was happening until it was sealed. The credits for this, of course, go to Ulbricht. However, we must also acknowledge Erich Honecker and the forces who managed to stockpile 40 kilometers of barbed wire and thousands of posts with no suspicion. Because of this, over the course of the next few years, barbed wire would be replaced with concrete until the wall was finally perfected around roughly 1975.
They didn't abuse us physically. They called it corrosion. It was a method they used to try and grind us down through hyper-control, isolation, disinformation. I spent the worst 11 months of my life here. After a while, you start to long to be sentenced.
While the border was officially sealed in 1975, it didn't stop the 500,000 people that crossed the border regardless. The guards took different measures in response to this, such as stationing police at controls and crossing points, barricading streets, and setting up guard dogs. But even so, over 80 access points were still open, and the Underground Railway was still up and functioning. Because the wall was built overnight and no warning was given, it separated friends and families on different sides of the wall, not to mention jobs, homes, and work were cut off as well. People who tried to cross were turned around by death threats and deadly force, and over the next few decades, more than 140 people died trying to cross. This eventually came to symbolize the division that the Cold War created, exercising the idea of a separated East and West side.
Many people died trying to get past the wall because of firearms. 91 of the victims out of the 140 were people trying to escape who were shot by GDR border soldiers. Only in April 1989 was the order to shoot officially up, once the border actually opened in November. The wall was 96 miles in length, and 2 of the walls were 11 and 15 feet tall. Between those 2 walls was the death strip. The wall had 302 watchtowers, 20 bunkers, 55,000 landmines, 259 watch/attack dogs, and machine guns activated with tripwires. Most of the Germans in the East found this situation difficult and distressing for good reason. The Soviets tried to make a planned economy in socialist paradise, but in West Berlin, it was a much better life with freedom and a better economy. East Germans, along with their restricted freedom, watched as the construction for the inner German border, a part of the already in place Iron Curtain, a physical wall separating the East and West that ran through the Baltic Sea and Europe, went up, unable to do anything about it.
Because of the rise of the wall and the feud between East and West Germany, the difference in their economies increased. West Germany had many wealthy soldiers from different countries who supported their economy. Meanwhile, East Germany's economy dropped significantly due to the new rule of Soviets and the lack of contact with outside forces. Because shipments to East Berlin were being cut off, a lot of East Berlin's economy went down, and people who depended on those shipments of food, coal, medicine, and power sources didn't get as much, if not any at all.
Now I'd like to speak of an escape story. Gunter Lifton was the first man killed trying to cross the border in 1961 on August 24th. He thought he could break through the barrier, which was only barbed wire at the time, since he was devastated to wake up and find that he was stuck on East Berlin, though his job was on West Berlin as a tailor apprentice. However, he was shot in the head while caught climbing over the railway tracks. Another touching story was the one of Peter Fetcher, who, being the youngest to die trying to escape, was only 18 years of age. He died on August 17, 1962, when trying to escape near the infamous Checkpoint Charlie, due to being shot. He was found bleeding out on Death Strip, where neither the Western police nor GDR border soldiers could rescue him, causing him to die a slow and painful death. People gathered on both sides, east and west, and watched this event unfold. Those in the West rallied and protested this, but were only met by the mayor of Berlin, Willy Brandt, telling them to stay calm.
It was a traumatic experience for all of us, watching that young man there and hearing him scream for help. At first they were perfectly normal cries for help. Then he started to plead and he got quieter and quieter, as if his life was gradually seeping out of his body.
Now we can speak of the wall's fall, where on November 9th, 1989, 28 years after it was built, it began to fall. It started with the mass protest of 500,000 people who scared East German leaders enough to loosen the barrier a bit and set new rules, which were read by Gunter Schabowski, who with no time to practice had to hurriedly say the new laws in front of the press, and they were immediately put into effect, hoping to make a small but not drastic change. However, when the East German leaders announced that anyone could cross the border freely, thousands of people were happy to cross. While some did just go through the border, there were people even using picks to break through the wall. The guards were too overwhelmed by all the people breaking through to do anything, and thousands of people got to the other side. Mr. Yeager then made the order to open the barrier, claiming that he feared with the ratio of people to guards they would be overpowered and many would die. Now, even years later, parts of the wall are still up as a reminder of the hardships the people of Berlin went through.
Now for the aftermath. In 1989, when the Berlin Wall fell, left many impacts on Berlin, not to mention Europe and the rest of the world. It affected Berlin by allowing it to finally be unified again, and by October 1990, the whole of Germany was united again, leading to the fast fall of the East European regiments, and December 25th of 1991's resignation of Gorbachev, not to mention the Union of Soviet Social Republics dissolve. One effect it had on Europe and the world was causing the Soviet Union's collapse and the European Union's rise, with some growing pains. You see, when the Soviet Union fell, it split into 15 different independent republics, the largest being the Russian Federation, who with the dissolve of the Soviet got its first democratically elected president, Boris Yeltsin. However, this didn't end well, and sudden changes spiked poverty and price all over Russia, causing Vladimir Putin's election in the year 2000, which led to him being president for the next decades.
Finally, I would like to say that the Berlin Wall's falling was a very important and heartfelt moment for the East Germans and even the West Germans, showing how they are free and they can be proud since they destroyed the wall on their own, showing how they can make a great difference and take responsibility for themselves and can change history's course on their own. Throughout this documentary, we have covered every event, starting with the simple putting up of the wall and the Germans' thoughts about it to the end, where the Germans were finally allowed to be happy and free again, after all they went through gaining the rights they deserved.
Thank you for watching!